Hello again. I'm Marco Arroyo, the preacher with the Seagoville Church of Christ in Seagoville, Texas. I'm happy you're joining me for yet another devotional. I hope your week has gone well. I hope you're blessed. I hope God is with you in your life and blessing you in everything that you do for Him and for His will. I hope you're well. I mentioned last week that we finally, finally our baby was born, and we're so happy, so blessed, doing well. Sleeping is still, pretty scarce around here, but it's getting a lot better, comparatively at least, and we're blessed and we're grateful. I appreciate everyone so much for the prayers. Again, I can't thank you all enough. I've really been thinking a lot of my life about quote unquote normalcy, and thinking about what the new normal is going to be, and getting back to doing things that I love to do. One of them is one thing I haven't done in a while, just in the lead up to the birth of our baby, has been Jiu Jitsu. I just haven't practiced Jiu Jitsu. I haven't gone to train Jiu Jitsu where I normally do once, twice a week. It's just been on the back burner, before our baby was born, because I was helping, Maggie out with things that she wasn't able to do because her belly was such an obstruction. It was really uncomfortable. And also I wanted to be there for her in case, she started getting contractions and all that pretty early on. So I stopped doing it then. And then I've been gone, because our baby has been born. And so I haven't been, able to go out there to do jujitsu. So I've been thinking about all these things, getting back into normalcy, getting back into life, as it were, whatever that means, right? And whatever that's going to look like. But I've been thinking a lot about jiu-jitsu, missing it a lot. I love it so much. It's such a great part of my life. And one thing, one memory that I have in jiu-jitsu was this instance where there was a 16-year-old kid. This kid, he's 16 years old. I remember his name is Miles, and he was doing a sparring round with a retired, I think he was a Navy veteran, with a retired Navy veteran who's about, maybe in his 40s or so. So there's this grown man who's lived a lot of life, and he's a retired military veteran in the Navy, and he's doing this sparring round in jiu-jitsu with this 16-year-old who's done jiu-jitsu since he was like, 8, 9 years old, I think, since he was pretty young. So this kid was good, but he was a scrawny little 16-year-old. They do the sparring round, and I think there might have been a little too much pride on the part of the grown man, the retired military veteran. And it got to a point where the 16-year-old had this grown man in a stranglehold, and it was a situation where the grown man needed to tap out, to submit, to say, I quit, you won, you got me. But he didn't. He really wasn't convinced that this 16-year-old could really do something to him. Next thing you know, there's a grown man, in his 40s, again, retired military veteran. He's just sleeping on the mats. He fell asleep. He was literally put unconscious by a 16-year-old. And I remember that was one of the first times I'd seen someone go unconscious in the jiu-jitsu setting. So he's unconscious. The blood flow to his brain was stopped, and so he's asleep on the mats. He's you can tell, it looks like he'd been sleeping there for hours. It was just a few seconds. Instantly, another person who trained jiu-jitsu there at the time, who's a doctor out here in Dallas for Baylor hospitals. He went to the man, and he instantly started taking care of him. He picked his legs up to get the blood flow back into his body and all that. And I remember thinking at the time, it's a good thing that doctor was here. It's a good thing that doctor was here. There have been situations like that where I remember thinking, it's a good thing we have that doctor here. It's a good thing we have him here. And there were situations where people, they would have injuries or whatever it was, and I don't need to get into all the specifics about that. And he would help them out in the moment. I mean, there was a doctor in the room. It's kind of like in the movies, right? Is there a doctor here? I remember thinking a lot of the time, it's good we have a doctor here. It's kind of interesting to think about that, because sometimes this is what happens in our lives, where we go through a situation that we really didn't need to go through. And we go through this situation, and sometimes we say, in hindsight, I wish the Lord would have been involved in that situation. And that's no fault of the Lord's. I wish I would have involved the Lord in this situation. There's this interesting piece of information that we find here in John chapter 11. When Jesus came to the tomb of Lazarus, he found that he had already been in the tomb in the tomb 4 days. John 11:17, verse 18. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had joined the women around Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary was sitting in the house. Now Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Notice that phrase. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. So she has this belief about Jesus. That Jesus, if you were involved in this situation with my brother's illness, Jesus, if you were involved with this time of hardship, suffering that we've been going through, if you had been involved, things would have turned out differently. That's an important and impactful belief to have in your life. To look at your life, to look at the situations you're going through and say, if the Lord is involved in this situation, it's going to turn out different than if he were not involved. And some people, and far too many people, make the mistake of treating life like it's just out of our hands. Like it's just totally out of our hands, and there's no decisions we can make that might affect real change in our lives. It's just going to happen the way it's going to happen. There's this big craze nowadays of people saying, well, it's just, I trust in the universe, and the universe is going to do what it's going to do. It's going to give me what it's going to give me. Not much I can do about it. Just place everything into the hands of the universe, people say. Again, I feel bad for people who view their lives that way, who have relegated their futures to just saying, it's going to happen the way it's going to happen. Nothing I can do about it. I'm just going to do the same old, and really do nothing about it. How different is that from the perspective of Martha? Jesus, if you would have been involved in this situation, it would have been different. And not just different, by the way. If you would have been involved in this situation, we could have avoided this hardship. We could have avoided this suffering. If you would have been involved in this situation, we could have been spared from needless hardship, needless pain. That's not to say that having Jesus in your life spares you from all hardship, all pain. But in this situation, it would have spared them from what would have been, something that could have been avoided. Avoidable hardship, avoidable suffering, avoidable pain. And there are situations where God would have us to avoid those things. He wants us to live quiet, peaceable lives, right? You read that in 1 Timothy, you read that in 1 Thessalonians, right? However, suffering is a part of it, hardship is a part of it. But, God wants us to hope that things turn out in the smoothest way possible. But again, it's not always going to be that way. So please don't misunderstand me there. But we also have the mindset of Martha that says, if I were to involve Jesus in this situation, it would not just turn out differently, it would turn out better. It would turn into the best possible outcome, the best possible situation. If I involve Jesus in my decision making, if I involve Jesus as far as taking care of the outcome, if I pray to him and relinquish all this to his mighty, powerful hands, his loving heart, his care for me, this is going to turn out in the best way possible. There isn't a single Christian that should ever have the mindset of, well, it's going to happen the way it's going to happen. The Christian mindset should be, it's going to happen and turn out to the best situation, the best outcome possible. Why? Because Jesus is in control of this situation. I give him control in this situation. I know that if he is here in this situation, everything's going to be okay. No matter what the outcome is, it's going to be the best one. In your life, have the faith, the belief of Martha. I want to encourage you this week. When you pray, pray prayers that involve the Lord in your life. Specifically, pray prayers, Lord, I want you to be in this situation. Lord, I want you to be in the situation of my schooling. I want you to have the priority. I want you to get the honor, the glory, the praise. I want your will to be done here. Lord, I want you to be here in my family. Because I know that if you are here, things will turn out better. Things will turn out differently. Lord, I want you to be in my family. Lord, I want you to be in my church family. Lord, I want you to be in my job. Lord, I want you to be in every single part, because I know I want you to be in my heart, in my soul, in the very deepest parts of me, Lord, because I know if you are there, not only are things different, things are not only better, things are at their very best if you are there, Lord. Pray specifically and say, Lord, I want you here. If you're in a tough spot, pray, Lord, I want you in this situation right now. Please be here with me. And he will. To every Christian, we have that blessing and promise. He will be there. I would encourage you to remember Psalms that teach this message, like Psalm 124. If it had not been the Lord who was on our side, let Israel now say, if it had not been the Lord who was on our side, when men rose up against us, then they would have swallowed us alive. Then when their wrath was kindled against us, then the waters would have overwhelmed us. The stream would have gone over our soul. Then the swollen waters would have gone over our soul. Blessed be the Lord, who has not given us as prey to their teeth. Our soul has escaped as a bird from the snare of the fowlers. The snare is broken, and we have escaped. Our help is in the name of the Lord, who made heaven and earth. You notice that psalm here? If it wasn't for the Lord being on our side in our lives, everything would have been lost. I would encourage you to remember these psalms, especially Psalm 124 this week. And thirdly, involve the Lord in your life. Involve the Lord in your life, remembering the faith of Martha. Lord, as long as you're here, everything's going to be at the very best it could possibly be. Lord, as long as you're here, I know that I'm taken care of. I know that everything I do will be taken care of as long as you are in my life. I love you very much. Involve the Lord in everything you do. Have a great and blessed week. See you next time. Take care.